Mic check 1 2.
That's really stupid. Aloha Voyagers. Have you ever in your travels experienced all that you want to experience, and then you concluded your trip, or you went home, or you went on with your travels, and at some point thought, I wish I had done that, or you missed an opportunity to do something for various circumstances and it bothers you? Well, that's basically what this video is about. Before I go on, I only ask one thing, well, maybe two. Hit that like button, and better yet, subscribe. So today I compiled a list of 10 places I've missed in my travels as I reminisce places I've been, places that I missed for various circumstances. Now when I say various circumstances, whether it's because I ran out of money, I got sick, I decided to go somewhere else, I was afraid of hitchhiking, which honestly was a big reason. Number 10, Atitlan, Guatemala. Now back in 2014, I took a very short, it was not enough time. I took a week vacation to visit Belize and Guatemala. This was my first true backpacking trip. Now, mind you, I didn't know any better. I was very new to backpacking. I literally packed way too heavy. I overpacked, and it's something I look back on and laugh at. But had I had another week, I could have done so many different things. There's Semuc Champe, if I said that right. One of the most popular attractions to visit in Guatemala is Atitlan, Lake Atitlan, and the volcanoes that surround. It's something that I look back on. It's one of those underrated backpacking trips I've ever taken, the first one, where if I had more time, at least another week, it would have opened the door to so many opportunities, and this is one of them. Coming in at number 9, Sequoia National Park. When I visited California back in 2017, it was part of a cross-country, mostly by train and by other means, kind of cross-country trip. I'm grateful and blessed to have had the opportunity to visit some of Yosemite National Park, which is just an absolutely amazing national park. It's just majestic, and it's a place you have to visit when you're in California. But I'll be quite honest, my desires were more towards visiting Sequoia National Park, because ever since I was young in history books, I saw these pictures of these massive trees, these really massive old trees that were unfortunately carved up and you can drive through them. And it was like a fantasy I had ever since I was young. Unfortunately, when I was in California, I didn't get a chance to visit them. And that was simply because I didn't have my own car. I didn't have my own means to freely get in a car and go. Number 8 is extremely random. Back in 2016, I visited the small Eastern European country of Moldova. I will say that I regret that I did not spend more time in Moldova. I can't answer why. I think it was because of budget. Even while I was there, if I could have spent maybe a few more days, one of the places I would have chosen to visit that I missed out on is the unique, unrecognized country of Transnistria, if I'm saying that, which is part of Moldova, but is a separate entity within Moldova that recognizes itself as independent, but it's not formally recognized. And what's unique about Transnistria is it has its own border, and it has its own currency, it has its own little government. It speaks more of a Slavic language. It would have been a really weird trip, but it just would have made it that much more interesting, and it's exactly what I look for in travels, is unique experiences where I could just be like, hey, what's up with this place? Let me go visit it, just for the hell of it. The closest to Transnistria I came was being in the capital of Chisinau, and I was able to get my hands on a Transnistrian currency. But I had it in my hand, I was like, ooh, this is the closest I could come to it. And this is when I just left. I could have went back and experienced it, but I honestly don't know why I didn't go. I think once again, it was because of budget. I only had so much money in my entire European trip. Number 7, Gallipoli, Turkey. My time in Turkey wasn't that very long. It was just a little over a week, and my focus is more of the European side of Turkey, Thracian Peninsula. After I left Istanbul, I had intentions to go visit the town of Çanakkale, but a little further north was the village of Gelibolu or Gallipoli. What I had hoped to do was not just visit Çanakkale and the nearby fortress and the relics of the First World War, but I had hoped to go outwards, you know, within the peninsula, south, and I think across the peninsula there's different beaches and memorials where you can visit where certain battles took place between the British and the Ottoman Turks. But at that time, this is way before I felt confident of hitchhiking, and I just had this massive fear. No matter how many people told me, oh, just hitchhike, everybody does it. It's Eastern Europe, people are more open to hitchhiking, and I was just afraid, like putting my thumb out on the side of the road, if anybody's could pick me up. I was one of those people. And then just months later, I literally hitchhike everywhere. Had I braved hitchhiking at that time, I would have visited so many different memorials. I would have had these grand experiences meeting these different kinds of people. And it just would have nosedived deep into history, First World War history. Number 6, Kosrae Island, Federated States of Micronesia. I spent 3.5 months backpacking from New Zealand to Hawaii, traveling across many different islands in the Pacific Islands. I had allotted some time and finances to visit at least one Micronesian island, and that's Kosrae, which is the easternmost island out of all the states, and it was easily accessible had I come from the Marshall Islands straight into Kosrae. And this would have given me some time in my last island before I returned to Hawaii to explore Kosrae. It has a bunch of different waterfalls, beautiful hikes, and from what I hear, it's very green and very lush and just absolutely beautiful. And it would have given me a nice brief introduction into Micronesian culture in this island group, which is very unique, has a multitude of different languages, different cultures. Kosrae would have offered that uniqueness to me. The reason why I didn't go was as simple as this, and I don't really beat myself up for it. I just ran clean out of money. I set a budget $6,000 for 3.5 months in the Pacific Islands. And don't get me wrong, I spent it wisely. I had an incredible experience, and I did everything I wanted to, and what came out of it was way better than anticipated. That being said, I had literally $200 to spend by the time I was at the end of my Marshall Islands trip. But in the future, it leaves a lot of room to have a very unique Micronesian trip where I can visit different Micronesian states. Number 5, Haleakala, Maui. I have visited Maui twice during my time living here in Hawaii. I visited Maui for the first time back early 2019 with my mom and my family, and we did a lot. We did snuba, we drove around West Maui, we did a sunset catamaran, which entailed whale watching. And the most exciting part was we did the road to Hana, but we did the complete loop all the way to Hana and then down and around and back to West Maui. One thing we did miss out on doing that we actually briefly talked about was drive up to the summit of Haleakala, the House of the Sun, which is the highest point of Maui. It's just like being on another planet. But it's something I wanted to do, but we had done so many other things that, you know, I didn't mind missing out on it. 2 months later, I did a 5-day trip, and it was more like a vacation. We had a resort. One of the plans was to arrive, and before we check into our hotel was to get the rental car and drive up to the summit of Haleakala, experience sunrise and see the beauty and be on top of Maui. But those plans actually changed. We actually arrived in Maui, we had breakfast at IHOP, never got to visit Haleakala. Ever since then, I've even contemplated taking like a weekend off work and taking a one-nighter, driving up Haleakala, doing an overnight camp, come back down and come back to Oahu. Number 4, is actually not just one place, but several, and that is in Serbia. And one thing I regret doing is not spending more time. I came in from Romania, stayed in Belgrade for about 2 to 3 days, and then I went up north to Novi Sad, and from there I went straight to Croatia. There's like a whole multitude of things in the south, different historic sites to visit. There's beautiful mountains to the west on the border of Bosnia. What I really actually wanted to visit, there are a number of fortresses along the Danube River. Smederevo Fortress, the Golubac, which sits across the border from Romania. I don't think I went because I couldn't afford the cost of getting there. Like, there were no trains or buses and places to stay. Like, I think it was more so of staying with my budget, because my budget was so tight. $8,000 in 6 months of travel in Europe, that's really cutting it tight. That's why I didn't go. That's why I didn't spend more time in Serbia, because I think I was channeling more of my focus and spending the most amount of time I could in Greece. Serbia deserves so much more. They deserve way much more love and time. And I will say I regret it. If I could just drop $1,000 to fly from Hawaii to somewhere, I would fly from Hawaii to Belgrade. To my fellow Serbian friends, I am so sorry. Number 3, Niue. Niue is a political entity that's a part of New Zealand, but it's kind of like self-governing, kind of like the Cook Islands. But Niue is like a coral rock island in the South Pacific, east of Tonga and west of the Cook Island. Niue has its own language that's part of the Polynesian language family. It's culturally unique on its own, even as small as it is. I nearly went after my New Zealand working holiday visa was up. But it has these beautiful rock formations, like pinnacle-like rock formations that are absolutely out of this world. The reason why I didn't go is because if you fly to Niue from New Zealand, you have to fly back, which is really expensive. It was out of my budget, which I already had an allotted amount for the Pacific Island trip. And there were no flights from Niue to Tonga. I think back in the day they used to be, but because I don't know what happened. The closest I came to going, this idea that I could fly to Niue and possibly find someone on a sailboat and hitch a ride from there to Tonga. That's a long shot, because Niue, it didn't seem like it was a very common stop for sailors, as the anchorage is really crappy. I came very close. It's funny because when I didn't go to Niue, I went straight to Tonga. I ended up hitching a ride for the first and so far only time from Tonga to Fiji, which ended up being one of the most marvelous voyage experience I've ever had in my travels. But if I had taken that chance, which would have been a big chance, that would have been quite amazing. And number 2, the outer islands of Tuvalu. I flew from Fiji to Funafuti, the capital island of Tuvalu. I had a plan, and that was to stay in Tuvalu, but because there are no ATMs in Tuvalu, I had to draw money out of an ATM in Fiji and really strictly budget my time during that week in Tuvalu. Also, because I had plans to visit Nauru, which has a very strict visa process where you have to book accommodation and you have to literally plan your time to the T and prove it on your visa. I visited Nauru after Tuvalu, which meant that I had to limit my time in Tuvalu because of Nauru. Don't get me wrong, Nauru was spectacular. It was the most unique experience I've had in my travels, and I'm grateful to have gone. But because of this plan, it limited my time to 1 week in Tuvalu, which means that any hopes and ambitions to visit the outer islands, that was shot out of the water. It just couldn't happen because I was there too short of a time. Leaving Tuvalu was a tease because I felt like it just wasn't enough time. And ever since I left Tuvalu to this day, I've been dying to go back. And last but not least, this is in Bulgaria. For 4 years, from the moment I left the country till this day, it like really bothers me. Like, I regret it because of the circumstances and how things happen. There's a place called Buzluja. I think I'm saying that right. So back before the Iron Curtain fell, the Soviet Union built a number of structures across Eastern Europe. One of these is Buzluja. And what this place is like, I wouldn't call it a monument, but it was a structure, and it was a meeting place for many different Soviet leaders during the Soviet times. This structure sits high up in the mountains of Bulgaria. Ever since the Soviet Union fell, this structure has laid abandoned since. If you know me well, I love everything abandoned, because to my perspective and in my eyes, any place that's abandoned is beautiful to me, because it tells a story of what used to be, and of course the process of it falling apart. It's just fascinating. This structure is probably one of the most fascinating I've ever come across before traveling, and obviously before traveling to Bulgaria. The reason why I didn't go, and this bothers me so much to this day, was because I did not overcome my fear of hitchhiking. I was in a city called Veliko Tarnovo, which is a very beautiful historic city. And I literally woke up planning to go to Buzluja. But I panicked, I freaked out, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get stranded and nobody's gonna pick me up and get lost. And I just had this fear. I nearly even rented a car, but I couldn't find a place to rent a car. So I missed the opportunity. I just relaxed that whole day. I didn't really do anything, and then the next day I left and I continued my trip across the Balkans, and it was literally every day for several weeks where I just regretted not going, and I even contemplated going back to Bulgaria. Then I was like, oh, my budget. And a week and a half later, since that opportunity, I hitchhiked for the first time in Romania. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. It was like that fear is gone, and I just felt free. I can stand on the side of the road anywhere, especially in Eastern Europe where hitchhiking is like normal. Ever since that opportunity, my mouth has been watering of going back and seeing this monument and visiting it, hitchhiking or renting a car, whatever. It was a missed opportunity that it just bothers me. It's bothered me since, and it bothers me now. And what bothers me more is that this is an abandoned structure. The government of Bulgaria or some organization can come and buy the property, the building, and fix it up, which would be cool, but I couldn't go back to see the abandoned structure. Or two, it can further deteriorate and collapse, get demolished. Hopefully there comes a day where I can revisit, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria on like a revisit kind of trip and go up to Buzluja. It would be amazing, and it would kind of help me move on and move forward to be able to not let this happen again. Whew, that was a mouthful. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I'm glad to have been able to get this off my chest and off of paper into a YouTube video. As much as you travel and budget, no traveler is perfect. Places will go miss for various circumstances. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Any missed opportunities in your travels that you want to share with me, please leave it in the comments below. I may have said this is the first and only, but chances are I will brainstorm and think that there will be many other places to add to the list. That being said, there will probably be more videos. Once again, guys, if you could like the video, it'll help boost my channel. And also don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again, guys, for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for more content. And as I like to say, once the traveling begins, the voyage never ends.